Boy, good morning. I understand there's some California folks here. Did I hear that correctly? Outstanding. What a joy to be with you here and just to learn about all the things God is doing at Momentum. I am from California, actually Southern California, a little town called San Juan Capistrano. But a couple years ago, I was up in San Francisco. As I was on a bike ride with my family that day, we were walking, we were shopping, we were driving by the coast, we went over the huge San Francisco Bridge, and I'm walking there with my wife, and I see these two college students, college age, sitting there with a bucket with a sign because they were taking money to save the polar bears. I said to my wife, I need to talk to them. My wife goes, "Are you sure? Because I always get myself in trouble doing this." I said, no, I want to talk to them. So I walked up and said, "Hey, my name is Sean. It looks like you're raising money to save the polar bears." I said, "Good for you. We ought to care about creation." I said, "But I have a question for you. Are you pro-choice or are you pro-life?" Now, why did I ask him that question? They care about animals. I want to know if they also care about the greatest unseen people group in the world and in America, which is the unborn. Are they going to raise money to save polar bears? Are they also going to care for the unborn, which are victims in our society? The moment I asked if they were pro-choice and pro-life, you'd have thought I pulled out a gun on these girls. She goes, "Oh my goodness, I bet you're a Christian. I bet you're a Republican." And then she starts going off on President Bush at that time. I remember sitting there and I said, "Wait a minute." I said, "Why are you getting so defensive?" She calls her friend over and she goes, "Hey, here's a guy who's pro-life." And her friend, you know what she says? She goes, "Oh, you're pro-life?" She goes, "I've had 4 abortions and I like it." They start mocking me, literally making fun of me right on the point. And the girl turns to me, she goes, "So you think embryos are like human beings?" She said, "How do you know embryos even exist? Do you have an embryo inside of you?" I said, "Well, I'm a man. I can't." I said, "How do you know polar bears exist? Do you have a polar bear inside of you?" Needless to say, the conversation went downhill from there. But let's face it, there's few issues we can raise that people get more defensive about than the question of abortion. I just want to put my cards on the table. I want you to know something. I am actually pro-choice. It might surprise you thinking, well, I didn't expect that at this conference, but I am pro-choice. I believe in a woman's right to choose where she works, where she goes to school, who she marries. A woman can choose whatever she wants to, as long as she doesn't take the life of an innocent human being. See, there's really only one question. There's only one question that matters about the question of the unborn. And here it is. I want you to imagine, I'm guessing that some of you have younger brothers and sisters or kids who play in your neighborhood. Imagine you're at home and you're helping your mom and dad with the dishes. And I know for some of you, this is a big stretch. You're at the kitchen sink, you're helping with the dishes, your back is turned, and in comes walking your 5-year-old younger brother or sister. And you can't see him or her, and he says to you this, he goes, "Hey, can I kill this?" Now, before you answer the question of yes or no, what question are you going to ask back? What is it, right? If you turn around and it's a roach, you're going to say yes. If you turn around and it's a cat, you're going to say, "Hurry up." If you turn around and he's holding the bunny, you're going to go, "Okay, wait a minute, that's kind of cute. Why do you want to do harm to a cute little bunny?" If you turn around and the 5-year-old is holding an infant that he pulled out of a carriage down the street, you're going to say, "Time out, you need counseling." No. Now the question is, why is it okay to kill one thing and not the other? Because you know why? How we treat something depends upon what that something is. Did you hear that? The way we treat something depends upon what it is. That's why you treat a human being different than you treat a rock. And you treat a human being different than you treat a roach. If the unborn is just a mass of tissue, then no justification for abortion is necessary. But if the unborn is a member of the human race, then no justification is adequate. The question is, what is the unborn? I want you to realize this is not just an academic question for me. I don't just give a speech and go home. I care about this issue. In fact, I'm a dad. My wife and I have chosen life many times. Here's a picture of my daughter who's 5. We were having breakfast not too long ago. She looked at me, she said, "Daddy, I love you more than pancakes." If she was here, none of you guys could even talk to my daughter. Then I have a son, 8 years old. He's crazy fun. This is my son playing at a water park. We heard about Sylvester Stallone's son dying at 36 years old. 36! My son goes, "Dad, did he die of old age?" I'm 36. That one was kind of painful. It's actually more personal than that, because here's a picture of my wife on the right in red. And you probably noticed something about her belly. She's pregnant. But next to her, see, I have 2 kids that you saw. I have 3 kids. My son, Shane Joseph, is inside her belly over there. He's coming to visit us. Ironically, around Labor Day, he's due. I thought it was funny. My wife didn't think it was funny, but I did. My wife is on the right. Next to her is my sister Katie, who's also pregnant. Next to Katie is my sister Heather, who's also pregnant. But I want to tell you something about my sister Heather. You see, you're probably looking going, boy, she looks a little different than the rest of you. She has darker skin, a better tan, yes, I get it. And she's got dark hair. In fact, she looks Hispanic, that's right. My sister Heather was adopted. See, her mom was 14 years old, and she got pregnant with my sister Heather. But you know how she got pregnant? It wasn't by choice. She was raped. You know what a lot of people would say in our society? You know what a lot of Christians say to me? They say, I am against abortion, but I'm in favor of it when a woman has been raped. And I get tears in my eyes because I thank God that my sister's birth mother believed that every human being, regardless of how they're conceived, has value and is made in the image of God. See, you're probably learning this week about how your life and your choices have consequences. But what you probably haven't thought about is the choices you make in this life will echo for generations to come. Because you see, the next picture coming up is my niece. That's my sister Heather's daughter. See, her mom chose life, and think of all the generations that will experience life because of one 14-year-old girl who had every reason to pick abortion. She had a tough family. It's embarrassing to carry a child when you're 14 years old. She said, I'm going to value this life regardless. And that generation, her, she is the cutest kid. She is crazy. And she's the funniest kid I think I've ever seen. Thank God that my sister's birth mom chose life. See, this morning I want to talk to you about James 1:27, because that's a passage that we're here exploring this week, aren't we? James 1:27 says this. You've probably heard it a number of times. It says, religion that is pure and undefiled before God, the Father, is this. Religion that is undefiled is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. You've been learning this week about how important it is to share your faith with people of a different race, with people of a different socioeconomic status, with the poor. We've been learning that everybody matters. But I got a question for you. Why bother about the homeless? Who cares? Seriously, why do we bother at this week to go care for the poor, to care for the orphans, and to care for the homeless? Why do they matter? What is it about them that we should care about? Because you know what? In the Roman Empire, when Christianity came along, you know what the Romans would do? If a baby wasn't perfect and they didn't like it, they'd go put it on a hill somewhere and it would just die. They didn't care. But then along came this rogue, rebel group of people, and they called themselves Christians, and they believed something different. You know what they believed? They believed something that is so countercultural, it turned the world upside down. You know what it was? They said human value doesn't come from what you look like. Human value doesn't come from what you have, such as money or possessions or power. Human value comes from something that all of us have in common. And you know what it is? It's that all of us are made in the image of God. You know why we go care about the poor? I don't care if they're a drain on society. We care about them because the poor are made in the image of God. Why do we go reach out to Muslims? Why bother with Muslims? Some of you are probably afraid of Muslims. I know you are. You're afraid of Islam. Why do we care about Muslims? Because Muslims are made in the image of God. Why do we care about orphans? Why do we care about people? Why do we care about the unborn? Because the unborn are made in the image of a God who loves them. From the moment of conception, they are valuable human beings. My 8-year-old son I was telling you about, we were watching TV the other day, and I like to ask my son questions. And we're watching TV, and a man came up. It was kind of I don't even remember what show it was, but there's a man in a hospital building. And he had been wounded. I think he was in war, a veteran. And he had no arms, and he had no legs. He was sitting there, basically a torso, his body, and his head. And I turned to my son, who's 8, I said, Scotty, do you think that guy, even though he doesn't have any arms, even though he doesn't have any legs, do you think he's a valuable human being? Or do you think he's less valuable because he's missing some limbs? My son gave me the look he often gives me, which is when he thinks I'm asking him a stupid question. He looked at me like I was stupid. He goes, Dad, of course. He might not have arms and legs, but he's still a human being. You see what my son understood at 8? He understood something lost on the, quote, greatest minds of our day. He understood that value does not come from how you look on the outside. Your value does not come from your appearance. Your value does not come from how athletic you are, or how popular you are, or how smart you are, or what family you come from. My son understood at 8 that human value comes from the fact that we are made in the image of a perfect and a holy God. That's why we care about the unseen this week. The rest of the world doesn't care, but as Christians we say, wait a minute. We care about the downtrodden. We care about those who the rest of the world turns their back on because they have value as human beings. Friends, it is that truth that turned the world upside down. And it's the truth that our culture desperately needs today. When I was asked to speak on this topic, and I learned the subject for this week, I thought about it and prayed about it for a while, and then all of a sudden it hit me. I thought, are you kidding me? I thought the greatest group of the unseen that somehow our culture has decided is not worthy of life is the unborn. And for the next just 20-some minutes I have with you, I want to lay something out for you that if you write this down or if you take mental notes, I like to take mental notes. because I have a photographic memory. I just don't have any film. Or a data card for those of you who are like, what's film? I want to give you a simple case I give my students. You can use this in a class debate. You can use this on a class paper. You can use this in conversation. When somebody's pro-choice and they go, well, why would you believe in the unborn? These 3 simple steps lay out exactly a powerful case for the unborn. And you're going to notice something. I'm not going to use the Bible. You say, oh, not going to use the Bible? Look, here's why. If you're talking to someone who's not a Christian and you make a case to the Bible, are they going to believe you? No. You see, I tell my students, I say, don't reason from the Bible, reason to the Bible. You can make a case from science for the unborn, and then I'll say, now do you see why the Bible says every single human being is valuable and life begins at conception? Because it's true, the Bible affirms it. So here's a simple case, and I really hope you'll write it down and you'll learn this, because it is going to come to use for you. My wife had a friend she grew up with, just like this. They went to Christian conferences, they went to Christian camps, they heard talks like this, and her friend was lonely one night. She went out, she had sex with a guy she didn't even care about. She got pregnant. And she called my wife and she said, if you're working out, is it easier to have a natural abortion, a miscarriage? See, she didn't want the child, but she didn't want to have an abortion, so she was trying to have a natural miscarriage. My wife sat her down, walked her through these 3 principles, and she chose to have the child now who's about 7 years old. So here's a simple case I pray that you'll take to heart. We're going to call it the scientific case as they throw it up here. First off, if you remember, if you were watching the political debate about 3 or 4 years ago, when President Obama and John McCain were in front of Rick Warren at the church, Rick Warren asked both the presidential candidates a question. He said, when do you think life begins? You know what Mr. Obama said? President Obama said, he goes, whew, I don't know. That's above my pay grade. I sat there, I thought, are you kidding me? The answer is obvious. We know exactly when life begins. There is no debate about this, friends. Every embryological textbook that's out there will tell you that life begins at conception. You see, the first step is showing so people understand that the unborn is alive. You say, how do I know it's alive? Is the mom alive? The answer is yes. This is the participatory part of the program. Is the mom alive? Yes. Is the dad alive? Is the sperm alive? Is the egg alive? So is the fertilized egg alive? Yes. There is no point of non-life. It's always a living thing. How else do we know? Well, look, another thing is things that are alive have biological growth. Often ask my students, I say, well, what's the difference with a snowball that falls down a hill and gets bigger and bigger and grows because of snow that's added to it, and an embryo inside a human being that also grows? You know what the difference is? A snowball is added to from the outside. An embryo from the inside has biological growth because it's a separate organism. The unborn is alive from the moment of conception. In fact, what does abortion do, by the way? Abortion kills something. And you can only kill something that's what? That's alive. Friends, the first step I tell my students to make when they're writing a paper on this is I say, write down and defend the unborn is alive. And we know it. But what about this question? What if President Obama, when he said, we don't know when life begins, what if he was right? What if we didn't know? Does that mean we should go ahead and have the abortion? If we didn't know about the status of the unborn, we said, well, it could be alive, it could not be alive, let's go ahead and have the abortion. Is that what we would do? Of course not. Do you know there's only one president who wrote a book while he was president? Only one. It was President Reagan. He wrote a book called Abortion and the Conscience of a Nation. The New York Times didn't even review it, which shows you how liberal the New York Times is not to review a book by a sitting president. Abortion Unconscious of the Nation. And he asked this question. He said, if there was debate about the unborn, should we have the abortion? He said, let me give you an example. This is President Reagan. He said, imagine you find a body that's unresponsive. Doesn't seem to be alive. You know, when you slap it, when you push on it, it doesn't seem to be breathing. You're not sure if it's alive or not sure if it's dead. Would you go ahead and bury it? How many of you would say, yeah, if we didn't know if it was alive or dead, I'm going to bury that body? Yeah, you people are sick. Of course not. When we bury a body, what do we need to make sure? I want to make sure it's absolutely dead. Then you bury it. So the burden of proof is on the person to prove that it's dead. Otherwise, we wouldn't think about it. Look, if you were given the job to blow up a building, before you blow up a building, you make sure everybody's out. And your supervisor comes to you and says, is everybody out? And you go, I don't know. I'm not sure. I hope so. I bet they are. I'm not sure if everybody's out of the building. Let's go ahead and blow up the sucker. I want to see it fall. Is anyone going to do that? Of course not. You'd be charged with manslaughter. You make sure that it's clear before you would think about, even consider blowing up the building. Friends, even if we weren't sure whether the unborn was alive or not, the burden of proof is on those who take life. Pro-life gets the benefit of the doubt. So when some says to me, oh, we don't know when life begins, I say, even if you're right, of course we wouldn't take it. But we do know step one, the unborn is alive. But step two, we got to show something else. How do we know the unborn is separate from the mother? Because if you talk to someone who's pro-choice, you read the literature, what are they going to say? They're going to say, oh, it's my body. Last night on CNN, I watched Antonin Scalia, one of the Supreme Court justices, being interviewed, and he was asked about Roe versus Wade, and they showed all these people picketing, and the sign says, keep your government out of my body. That's the argument, right? It's my body. I think we need to show that the unborn is separate from the mom. So how do we show this? I find something very odd. Think about it. If the unborn was part of the mother's body, then that would mean my wife is both male and female. Did you get that? Because she's pregnant with a boy, my son Shane. You see, pregnant women can carry babies of a different gender. Half of pregnant women are carrying boys. So if it's a part of the woman's body, then the woman also has the male sex organ, right? Have you ever thought about that? But no woman is going to say that's true of herself. Why? Because that's not her body. That's distinct from her. Of course it is. But second, we know something else, is the unborn can carry a different blood type than the mother. The unborn can have a separate type of blood, and you know the heart starts beating at 21 days? That's 3 weeks. The heart starts beating in the unborn. 3 weeks. It can have a different blood type. Third, you know if you have a white mother and she's implanted with a black embryo, what color is the baby going to be? It's going to be black. You can actually be carrying a baby of an entirely different race than your own. How is that possible? Because the unborn is not a part of the mother's body. And last, what perfectly separates it is its own DNA. Do you know from the moment of conception, the unborn has its own unique DNA fingerprint distinct from the mother. From the moment of conception, it has its own DNA fingerprint. Friends, the unborn is not a part of the mother's body. What if someone says to you this? They say, well, wait a minute. A woman has a right to do whatever she wants to with her own body. Have you ever heard that? Who's heard that before in discussion? A woman has a right to do whatever she wants to with her own body. The first response is no, she doesn't. A woman can't do whatever she wants to with her body. I was making this point to my students a number of years ago. I said, look, If a woman wants to take her body and be a prostitute, she doesn't have a right to do that. A student sitting in the back of my class raised his hand. He said, Mr. McDowell, you're wrong. Yes, a woman can legally be a prostitute. I said, no, she can't. You're wrong. He said, actually, I'm right. I'm going to prove it. I said, okay. He said, I went to Vegas last weekend, and here's a card of a woman who's a prostitute. I said, okay, you win the argument. Why do you have a card of a prostitute in your wallet? See me after class. I said, okay, I concede, you win the point. But she certainly can't where I live in San Juan Capistrano. In fact, if a woman wants to take her own body and shoot somebody, does she have a right to do that? No. A woman's right to her body is limited when it's going to bring harm to another human being. And the problem is, the unborn is a separate human being. The unborn is a separate human being. The last thing we need to show, say, okay, the unborn is alive, it's distinct from the mother, it's inside the mother, but it's a separate being. How do we know the unborn is human? Because if it's a separate organism, and it's alive, but it's not human, then you can go ahead and have the abortion. So how do we know it's human? Look, as I told you a few times, my wife is pregnant. We've had a lot of conversations early on about what we're gonna have, but we never had this conversation. My wife has never said, honey, it's fun to be pregnant. I really hope we have a dolphin. And I respond by saying, are you kidding me? I want a cheetah. She's like, no, I want a little koala bear. I'm like, give me a break. I want a cougar. Why did we not have that conversation? We didn't know what we were going to have. But what we're going to have is limited to what? Boy and girl, male and female. How do we know the unborn is human? Because where does the unborn come from? Human parents, right? Now, I'm not going to explain how that process works because I know we have some 7th graders here, and maybe you haven't had the sex talk yet. I am just kidding. It's the freshmen I'm worried about. Friends, I want you to take a step back and realize what we just did. Do you realize in 5 minutes, you have heard a powerful case for the unborn? From the moment of conception, it's alive. It's a distinct organism from the mother, and it's human. But you know what people will say? They'll say, okay, it's a living human organism, but it's different from the newborn or the rest of us, so we can abort it. And I've thought about that. I wonder what differences there are between the unborn and between what's born, and are any of those differences enough to justify an abortion? So here's a difference, for example, is size, right? Have you ever noticed that the unborn is smaller than one who's born? You've probably noticed that, haven't you? Let me ask you a question. Does your size determine your value? Does it? Are men more valuable than women? Guys, don't answer that. Are the Norwegians who average 6'1" more valuable than the Japanese who average 5'5"? Of course not. Your size doesn't determine your value. I mean, give me a break. Is Dwight Howard for the Orlando Magic more valuable than Snooki?
Yes.
Okay, bad example. Bad example, my fault. But you get the point, don't you? The unborn is smaller, but your size doesn't determine your value. Thank God. How else is the unborn different? The unborn is also different because it's less developed. Some people say you can have an abortion with the unborn because it's not as developed as one who's outside of the womb. Now, do you know that life isn't just developed and undeveloped? All of life is a continuum. They used to think that the human brain was developed at like 13 or 14 years old. Do you know that they now know that the human brain is not fully developed until 26? And the decision-making part of the brain is not formed. That's why teenagers do stupid things. Do you have any idea how much comfort this brings parents when I say, look, it's not your fault, their brains just aren't fully formed yet? Now, the unborn is not less valuable because its brain's not fully developed. And by the way, I'm not talking about this brain. I don't think his brain will ever be fully developed. Think about this for a second. Does your value come from how developed you are? Are the leaders here, 26 and over, who have fully developed brains more valuable than you? The answer is, of course not. So if that's true, why are you more valuable than an infant? You're not. Why is an infant more valuable than one that's still inside the womb? Friends, your size and your level of development does not determine how valuable you are. But there's another difference. It's the environment. The unborn lives in a different place. Obviously it does. But let me ask you questions again. Does where you are determine what you are? Does your value change as you change zip codes? Do you folks from California have less value like I do because we're in Kentucky? Of course not. Your value doesn't change your location doesn't change your value. You meant what I knew. In fact, here's a picture of a baby by the name of baby Rachel, born at 24 weeks. 24 weeks. That's barely, 6 months into pregnancy? You could hold this baby in your hand, it was less than a pound. Well, this mom went into labor early, and the doctors worked heroically overtime and just exerting themselves to save this child. Now, I want you to think about something. Those doctors, everybody, they commended them for saving the life of this infant. Don't you find it odd that the exact same doctor, the exact same woman, that doctor could go in and take scissors and instead of cutting the umbilical cord at the exact same stage in that baby, cut it in the head as many abortions cause, and people would say it's humane because it benefits women. Does that strike you as crazy? If a doctor went up as that baby was lying there, took scissors and crushed it and killed it, everyone would say that's barbaric and they'd sue him. They'd throw him in jail. But the exact same doctor, the exact same baby, changes location inside the mom and it's fine. How does our environment change our value? And the last one is degree of dependency. Yes, the unborn are dependent upon the mom. Look, I was teaching my seniors and I had this macho football player. I said, just because you're dependent on the mom doesn't mean you have less value. And this high school senior, I'll never forget it, macho football player, he raised his hand. He goes, look, I'm just going to be honest. I'm still 100% dependent on my mommy. Friends, the unborn is smaller, it's less developed, it's in a different place, and it depends upon the mom. But it is a member of the human race. In fact, here's what I believe. I think that because the unborn is more vulnerable, we should care about it even more. Look, if you're walking across the street and I push you down, everyone's going to say that's messed up. If there's a grandma who's 95 walking and I push her down, you're going to say that's even more messed up. Why? Because that grandma is more vulnerable. Who's the most vulnerable segment of our society? The unseen that people don't care about often is the unborn. Seems to me we should care about them even more. But you know what? I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, well, just the unborn don't look human. They don't look like a human being. Please hear me. Please hear me. Yes, they do. The unborn looks exactly like a human being is supposed to look at that stage of development. The unborn does not look like an adult or a teenager or an infant. It looks exactly like the unborn is supposed to look at that stage. Friends, we have a sad legacy in our country of taking a group of people and saying they look different, so we're not going to value them. We've done it to African Americans, haven't we? With racism and slavery. In fact, in slavery, we deemed African Americans 3/5 of a person. What a degrading thing to do to a human being. In fact, in 1906, there was a fellow by the name of Oda Benga, a pygmy from Africa. And because they believed in Darwinian evolution, they believed that he was closer and Africans were closer to the missing link than whites. So they took this man and they put him in a zoo, caged him, treated him like an animal, and 40,000 people came and saw the, quote, missing link. Isn't that a sad way to treat a human being? We've done it to women in our country. We've done it to children. In fact, we've done it to the handicapped, haven't we? We've done it to the elderly. You don't look like we think you should look, so you don't get the rights of human beings. There was a movie, you should see it, came out in the 50s, I think. It's called The Elephant Man. So there's a man born by the name of John Merrick, and he was utterly disfigured. People caged him, they beat him, they treated him like an animal, until a pastor came along, took him in, and said, wait a minute, he might look different, but he's a valuable human being. And in this movie, he wore a mask like you see. He was walking through the subway system, and he trips and his mask comes off, and everybody in horror goes, oh, look at this monster. And they start chasing him through the subway. They chase him and corner about 20, 30, a mob of people about to kill and get rid of this monster. They corner him in a bathroom, and John Merrick, he shouts out, he says, I am not an animal. I am a human being. And the people stop, and it dawns on them that they're treating somebody with human value like an animal, and they walk away. Friends, in about 2 minutes, I'm going to show you something. And what you're about to watch could change your perspective of abortion forever. I heard talks on abortion, I debated abortion, but it wasn't until I saw what I'm about to show you that the horror of abortion sank into me. Friends, in a minute, I'm going to show you a 52-second clip, not of the procedure of an abortion, but of an aborted baby in the first, second, and third trimester. Some of you might be thinking, why would you do that? You know why? How many of you have seen The Passion? Let me see your hands. Quite a few of you. How many of you have seen images of the Holocaust? Let me see your hands. All of you. You know why? Why do your teachers show you images of that? Because when you think of the Holocaust, they don't want it to just be a book. They want you to understand on an emotional level how horrible the Holocaust was. After you saw The Passion, I'm guessing most of you went, holy cow, I had no idea that crucifixion was so brutal. When most people think of abortion, you know what comes to their minds? They think of an abortion doctor or an abortion clinic or somebody parading about it. But very few people have an image of what it actually entails. Now, please realize something. I'm not here to give anybody a guilt trip about this. Please hear me. I didn't come here to make a guy who's talked a girl into having an abortion or a girl who's had experience with this feel bad. Because there's something I know from the depth of my heart. We worship a gracious and a forgiving and a loving God. And abortion is not the unpardonable sin. I have sinned profoundly in my own life. So there's no words that are with this. You can close your eyes. You can put your head down. I don't want anybody to be coerced into watching it. But from here on out, if you watch it, you're going to know exactly what abortion means. Take a look. guessing right now, some of you are feeling a combination of anger, shock, sadness, hurt. I show this to my students every year, and I teach them how to defend pro-life. The reason I showed you this is because I really believe life and death is at stake. I really believe that. I had a student come in and talk to me a few years ago. She came in, she said, "Mr. McDowell, do you have a minute?" I said, "Sure." She said, "Last year when we were studying the issue of abortion, I had a friend who was pregnant, and she was thinking about having an abortion." She said, "I don't know if you wanted to know this or not, but I went and I walked her through the things I learned about the scientific evidence for the unborn, and I showed her that video." I said, "Well, what happened?" She said, "Just a few weeks ago, the baby was born because the mother chose life." Friends, when James says to care about the unseen, I don't know a people group who's more unseen and more cast out than the unborn. Will you take a stand for the unborn? Will you teach a class at your school? Will you get engaged in discussion online? Will you help a crisis pregnancy center? I hope if you have a friend who considers this, that you will show it to him, because it could result in the saving of this innocent child. God, I thank you for the young people who are here. God, thank you that you care about each one of us from the moment we are conceived. God, I pray as we have a mixture of emotions from seeing this right now, just having a broken heart, that you will, during this time of worship, just funnel our hearts into the right place and glory that our parents chose life, that we have a chance to live and just direct our energies to being people who really care about and make a difference for the unborn. God, we love you so much, and be with us during this time of worship. And we pray this in your name. Amen.